Now it is 4 o'clock, and we will call the Kerrville City Council workshop to order. And our first presentation is from Dr. McCormick.
Just provide a brief introduction. Just
Okay.
wanted to, as you all recall, we do have a town and gown compact between the city of Kerrville and Schreiner University, and we're continue to be very excited about our partnership and the number of different fronts. We meet on a monthly basis, if not more, but regularly on a monthly basis, with various staff members connected between the city and Schreiner University to talk about mutually beneficial goals. And as you'll hear today from Dr. McCormick, we've had great alignment with a number of items of both the community's vision as well as Schreiner University's vision. So very excited to have Dr. McCormick here. Take it away.
Thank you, Evie, and thank you, council members. I'm delighted to get to be here, not only to talk to you about some of the things that we're doing at Schreiner right now, but in particular, some of the places we intend to go in relatively short order. I'll begin by saying something that sounds like hyperbole, but I think it's actually true, which is that Schreiner finds itself at a once-in-a-lifetime moment. And it's actually true because I don't think any of us will be around to see Schreiner at her 200th anniversary. And so it's an exciting time anytime you celebrate a milestone such as this. And we want to make sure we're taking full advantage of all the opportunities this once-in-a-lifetime moment provides us. So let me begin by reminding people that often we talk about Schreiner as a small institution, and that's true in a lot of fundamental ways. It reflects some of the culture that we believe in. It reflects our commitment to relational learning. It also tends to hide some of the big impact that we have. And so this is a slide from the economic impact study that Independent Colleges and Universities of Texas produces each year and illustrates that Schreiner isn't just small because there are some large impacts, including in terms of economic impact. It's not small in terms of the number of people that we serve as well. You can see over the last 5 years, we've averaged about 280 full-time employees with a little over 1,200 students. That includes, of course, during the pandemic period. And it's absolutely true that we feel like we have a big impact with a lot of our partners. And we think that this ability to create partnerships and work in collaboration with a variety of organizations and businesses in this community is key, because to the extent that any and all of these organizations grow and flourish, all of the rest of us grow and flourish. And so we want to thrive in order to help our partners thrive. But it's not just for our partners' sake that we're concentrating on thriving. Our goal is really to educate the men and women of this community. And it's easy to forget because places like Harvard or Rice or Stanford tend to soak up all of the oxygen in the discussions about higher education. But for the vast majority of colleges and universities, we are regional enterprises, and we serve our regional constituencies. The average distance that a person travels from their home to college is 51 miles. That's across the country, not just here. We've actually done the calculation ourselves. Ours are 52 miles. It's a little farther distances here in Texas, but roughly still the same. So you can see that a quarter of our students are first generation. Well over a third of our students are Pell eligible, which of course means their families have very little that they can contribute to the cost of college. A quarter of our students in the 2010 were Hispanic, and 36% of our students in 2021 were Hispanic. So we're really serving a lot of the people that do most of the living and dying in this community, and that's what we want to do. You'll see on the far right-hand side of the screen there that U.S. News and World Report identified us as a number 6 school in terms of social mobility. And that's very important for us. So that's a great metric that we're concerned about. And this suggests that students who complete their educational experience are able to move up socioeconomic quartiles from where their family began. And in so many ways, that is sort of the foundation of the American dream. But if we're going to serve a lot of students in this region, then we have to provide multiple educational pathways. Frequently, people confuse us as being just a liberal arts institution, and I'm not sure exactly what that means because I don't think they're or many, if any, pure liberal arts institutions left in this country. But, we do online programs, we do vocational nursing as a workforce development program, we do master's programs, we have programs for veterans, we have the Texas Center that you're aware of, as well as a whole lot of undergraduate traditional bachelor's programs. All that's to say, we are also committed to the arts. And I would just add that we're not a pure liberal arts institution, but we certainly still care about that area as well. And in so many ways, especially over the last 5-6 years, we have tried to align what we're doing with the goals of Kerrville 2050. And I'll just point out a couple of these. This isn't meant to be comprehensive, but I think this hits the high points. So we were writing our new strategic, or not so new anymore, but our current strategic plan right as Kerrville 2050 was being finalized. And when the Kerrville 2050 plan talked about life cycle amenities and new and more youth recreational activities, we decided to lean into our Summer at Shriner series. We've always offered some summer programs, but we really decided we can do much more here and be much more intentional and much more articulate about what we're doing. And so now you can go to our website and see our Summer at Shriner series, which is old now, but very shortly it will be updated for the summer to come. The Kerrville 2050 plan talks about long-range water plans, and of course we partnered with the city on a water reuse project. Enhancing infrastructure was a key part of the Kerrville 2050 plan. We've created a solar array over on what we call the western property with KPUB. My understanding is that 51% of that array at this point goes to support low to moderate income households, which results in at least about a $28,000 annual savings for those low to moderate households today because of that solar array. Of course, there's a lot about the River Trail, and I hope you've been out to Shriner's River Trail extension and the trailhead. We saw that as a wonderful opportunity to make some investments that not only benefited the entire community, but particularly our students and our employees as well. There's a lot of discussion about walkability in the 2050 plan and how people will move throughout the city. One of the things that we did, in addition to the trailhead amenities, was we used that as an opportunity to create a campus trail all around our campus. So regardless of where you are in a neighborhood around our trail or around our campus, now you can take the trail to the trailhead and really get anywhere in Kerrville. I'm going to talk a little bit about our hopes and intentions to connect out to the Singing Winds area as well. And if we're able to accomplish that, then you can imagine a young kid getting on his or her bicycle over at the Diedert Center and taking that bicycle on the River Trail up to our campus, take the campus trail all the way to the city pool, and never have to once get in trouble with vehicular traffic that's moving around town. There's discussion about native flora and fauna and how we educate the community about that. And just one example of this is one of our faculty members has a new grant approved to put a variety of bird watching stations along Shriner's part of the River Trail, which we look forward to doing pretty soon. And then promoting craft agriculture. And if you've driven by our western property, you've seen the sign on the fence that says coming soon. Shriner Vineyard. It's actually Kerrville Hills Winery Vineyard, but they're helping us establish this demonstration vineyard on our property. And so not only were we trying to align ourselves with what was going on in Kerrville 2050, but we also read that really as an invitation to be a full partner to the growth and development of the city. There was calls for an expansion of Shriner's programs, that we should be identifying higher education needs, and that we should actively address some of the needs. And I think nurturing growth in healthcare, which we've been a educational player in, is an exemplar of that. We absolutely wanted to align our growth with what KEDC was telling us were the areas of focus that they were concentrated on. I will admit that I didn't see a lot of ways in which we could explicitly participate in some of this sort of stuff. Gil Salinas and I worked on a STEM Challenge grant, which was supported by the Economic Development Administration, which we did not get last year. But for me, that really helped crystallize ways in which we could partner with KEDC in much, much more intentional ways. We have, because of what KED is focused on, built into some programs that we are now committed to offering. This fall, we started a new total engineering program, so you don't have to start here and finish it somewhere else, and we have tracks in mechanical engineering and civil engineering. Also started a criminal justice program this fall. Next fall, we'll be starting a computer science program and a Master of Science in Nursing program as well. In fall of 2024, we will start a new agribusiness. We're trying to decide exactly what the focus of that will be, but we think that's key, and certainly part of that will be craft agriculture to align with KEDC. And though the board will take its official vote next week, I don't think it's too early to say that we will have an aviation program that we'll be launching next fall semester, and we'll have the official announcement of that very shortly. So all of that's kind of the stuff that's baked into the system. That is either occurring or will occur, but we're at a once-in-a-lifetime moment. And so more work remains to be done. And I want to focus just on 3 areas quickly today that is going to be the subject of our focus over the next couple of months. I already shared with you that I was able to work with Gil on this STEM grant, and even though we did not get it, it was really a catalyst for me in trying to understand how we work with various local businesses to really not just provide workforce development experiences, but talent development experiences as well. I think there's a lot of call for this in the Kerrville 2050 plan, as you can see on this screen. And we see our way clear to this now. So this is a slide that we developed a couple of months ago as this nascent idea was still coming into form. I think Shelley passed out to you a handout which reflects our most current thinking on this issue. And you can see that there's been an expansion. Just a few weeks ago, we've had regional bankers come to us and say, we really need a program that focuses on rural banking needs. Can you stand that up for us? And we can, and we will by next fall semester. But it also reflects, I think, a more nuanced and intentional focus on the 5 areas, minus remote workers, that KEDC identifies as important. We can do a lot more things, I think, but these are the things we're prepared to start on really within the next couple of months. We hope to have all of this underway by fall of '23.
Dr. McCormick, is this one-page handout, the one you're talking about?
It's
Okay.
a one-page handout. And the things that are all the way on the right are sort of traditional 4-year academic programs.
Okay.
The things that are in the middle would be part of the new Center for Talent and Workforce Development there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Also are very interested in some infrastructure issues on our campus. We know, of course, that the 2050 plan reminds us to be attentive to those issues, especially when they potentially impact the larger committee. And so I want to turn your attention to an area that's particularly of both concern and interest and opportunity for us. So just to orient you, this is looking down on the campus, and if you look up in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a sort of fuzzy blue area. That's the city pool, to organize that, to organize your orientation. And there's a black line that runs along that green piece of property. We call that property the Weston property. There is no road there. Olympic Drive does not cut through, but if you drive by there, it looks like there should be a road there. It's sort of spaced in just that way. And then, of course, you cross Main Street, and then that brings you on into our campus there. And, we're trying to anticipate what some of your actions may be over the next several years. And we can see why the city would say that's an important road for us at some point to construct, that Olympic Drive extension down to Main Street. So why that impacts us is we're concerned on the one hand about the flow into campus. We anticipate that some people will use that entrance on campus to cut through to Memorial Boulevard, and that's not good for our students who are walking or our employees who are walking on campus. So how do we manage that infrastructure situation? And then we're also building out some activities on the western property, and we want to make sure that we don't build something on that property that we'll need to deconstruct, in 5-6 years when the city's ready to act, or maybe sooner, and that we can plan that out accordingly. So if you haven't been out to that property, I encourage you to go at some point. It is where the demonstration vineyard will be, and you can see where that area is marked out. We've already got, of course, the solar farm just above that vineyard that you can see. We also have a field station up there, and that's where our biology faculty do some of their research. We make sure they do that far enough away from the Guadalupe River because some of the things they're looking at are invasive species, and we don't want any contamination in the Guadalupe. The observatory is up there, so if you've been to a star party or you want to go to a star party, that's where you go to that star party. There's this beautiful Weston house up there from the early 20th century. We just hosted a NetView event on campus, had about 75 people from 21 states, all academics, looking at institutional saga, and we had the opening reception up there, and it's just a beautiful location with the sun setting in the Texas Hill Country. You forget what an extraordinary place we live until you can see it in other people's eyes. We're also going to add a community garden, and you can see that laid out. We've had a community garden on one side of the property. We've had a very generous donor who says we can do a lot more with this, and so we're going to do a lot more with it out on that piece of property. And then where the road perhaps should be, will be, right now we've sketched out a trail that would get people from the campus trail that circles campus. Of course, you still have to get across Main Street there, but then you could get on this trail, and that would take you right up to Drive. And then our third project is really about increasing our economic impact by becoming a more robust campus. And I'm talking about a robust campus in sort of all the senses of that term, cultural robustness. I'm also talking about robustness in terms of numbers of students and employees on campus. So one of the things that I come back to, and I was fortunate enough to be able to sit in some of the discussions as people were working on the Kerrville 2050 plan, was this spoken and sometimes unspoken sense that everybody kind of wants the benefits of more people in the community without all the problems of having more people in the community. And how do you achieve both of those sorts of things? And I would suggest that your local college is a way to do both of those things, in fact. So as we look at the Kerrville 2050 plan, we see the idea that Kerrville should be both a sports destination and a college town. And we think there are ways to accomplish both of those things. And in fact, those can be self-supporting. So we want to grow the Shriner student population. We think that, and we know that if that happens, we'll need to grow our employees, and that that's going to grow short-term visitors, both families who are visiting as well as competing teams who come to town as well. And so we've spent about 1.5 years doing a lot of due diligence over whether or not we should bring back football. So some of you know that Shriner used to have a football team, both at the high school level and at the junior college level. Very, very successful back in 1924. Maybe not quite so successful in later years, but we are in an athletic conference called the Southern Collegiate Athletic Conference that has now found itself in a place where it can be a sponsor of football, and so we would have a place to play if we decided to bring it back. And our board has asked us to do all of the work, make an argument, and give that to them so that they can make a decision on whether or not to bring this back. They will do that next week, and so we'll have a decision on this very quickly. Very conservative estimates. We think if we do some of the things that we're talking about, we'll probably see a 27% increase in employee numbers, 43% increase in freshmen, 45% increase in overall student enrollment. These are conservative. You'll notice that we had listed, right now that our current freshman numbers would be at 350. We were at 373 this fall semester. So if we can continue to meet or exceed those expectations, we'll pass those projections relatively quickly. So if you do something like this, then what happens to campus? And you know, I would suggest that what you're seeing here is like a 20-year vision. So this is not a quick conclusion, but it's about new pathways, new roadways. You know, I'll just take something like the track or the field events that you can see just under where it says East Main. Right now, our athletic conference has two universities that can sponsor field events, Trinity University and Texas Lutheran University. And that means that every year those two schools take turns sponsoring the conference championship, and Southwestern and Centenary College and Austin College and University of St. Thomas and Colorado College, we all have to go to one of those two places because they're the only locations that can handle the field events. And what we want to do here is put ourselves in a position where we can host those types of events too. So lots of materials, lots of changes, including flipping ball fields, as you can see in that picture. But there are some things we need to do in 2 years in order to start football or bring it back. And then all of that would happen over a much longer period of time. If we do football, then one of the things we would also like to add is a women's swimming team. We think that's important to help us maintain the sort of balances that we want among our student demographics. You know, we don't have an appropriate pool on our campus in order to accomplish that. We have a small pool that's fun to splash around in, but you couldn't hold collegiate competition there. And we were surprised a few years ago when the retiring coach at Trinity University came out and said, that city pool up there, that's extraordinary. That could be one of the premier college competition venues. You know, it needs some work, but it could serve in that function. So that was a great idea. We just didn't know how to make that happen. But we have a friend at the university who will be here in about a week and a half, and the city manager has graciously agreed to take us out there to look at, you know, with some investment, what could actually take place out here. And we hope that that would result in perhaps some positive traction for the city pool. But it has implications everywhere to do something like this. Already, we're running out of space in our dining hall on campus. And if you bring in another 100, 150 students or more, I don't know how we're going to feed them all. And so we've got to figure out what we're going to do with our dining facilities. It's probably time to revisit our dining facilities regardless, but this really gives us some exciting opportunities to do so. I don't know if we would do this. This is an artist rendering, but it's one possibility. So we think if those projections played out in the way that you just saw them on an earlier slide, that would result in about an additional $15 million of economic impact for the city each year. And we were early on estimating about $31 million in terms of capital investments. It's going to exceed that almost certainly. And it will way exceed it if we did the entire master plan that you saw on that one slide. Just to conclude, I'll say that at the very same time we're talking about all of these things, we are in the middle of an endowment campaign. This endowment campaign is primarily focused on scholarships for students, and we think that's very important to continue to make a Shriner education affordable for any of the students in this region who want to attend. So we're not going to do anything that will mess up our endowment campaign, which is going to cause us to be creative and aggressive in some ways in finding the funds for these other projects. But we are committed to doing and committed to accomplishing all of this vision. So Shelley told me I had 20 or 30 minutes. I hope I made it within that time period.
You did good.
Happy to answer any questions if you have those.
Council, anybody have any questions?
I just have a question about, on, I don't know, I guess it's slide number 5 or so. It's got that Shriner is the top performer in social mobility, and they're number 6. Is that in the state or in the country?
So the way U.S. News and World Report does it is it breaks out schools by national liberal arts universities. It does it by comprehensive. So we were a Western regional university at that point. We have now moved to Carnegie classification because we've had too many graduate students who have earned their degree from Schreiner. And so if you have X number of graduate students, then you go into a
Yeah.
different category. So this year, we went into a different category, but that was West Regional Colleges, I think it's called.
Okay, thank you.
Joe, anything?
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Kim?
Thank you for what you're
Great
doing for our
update.
community.
It's
Exciting.
exciting.
Roman?
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you all
We
very
just,
much.
we appreciate you so much. You,
I'm-
you do such good work, and to have you as a partner, we're proud to be one, so.
Thank you. We are too. Thank you for letting me come today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, subdivision code, who gets the ball?
We've got a number of updates for council today. So Mr. Paxton's going to brief mayor and council on 3 items, some subdivision code review elements. We promised you guys that's a living document, and we'd come to you periodically. It's been about a year since we made the changes, most recent changes, a major overhaul, and so we'll be talking a little bit about a few items that we have on that, and then also 2 major council goals and items that were identified in Kerrville 2050 being tree preservation guidelines, as well as dark sky, night-friendly lighting ordinance. Mr. Paxton?
Thank you. Again, we adopted the subdivision code about this time last year. So not much on the slide necessarily, but we did adopt it in September, and council did want to review, so the staff are kind of working through it. One of the specific things that have come up recently, when a project is requesting a delay of installation of their infrastructure, whether it be water, sewer, streets, the process in the code is not very clear and evident as to what the direct path is. So we definitely want to do some cleanup there. A lot of that stemmed from just supply chain this year, as projects have hit a delay waiting on materials. They're still wanting to keep some of their targets. They're requesting to record those plats prior to the installation of their utilities, and then finish their utility work, and then they could start construction on the actual projects. It has to do with some of their financial timing, some of their sales goals, and so on. But as we've worked through several projects with that, again, a little bit of inconsistency in when those triggers are put into place. So really, that's the biggest thing that we have found that needs an update. And so we're gonna work with Public Works and Legal Department to go through engineering and line out what that exact process and where the steps should fall. When does that improvement agreement come before the staff? When does that go to the Planning and Zoning Commission versus when they're recorded? So
Not to get in the weeds, Drew, but I mean, you're holding the plat to make sure the infrastructure goes in.
it's correct.
So
When they-
now you're talking about having a plat prior to having infrastructure?
When they do that, the improvement agreement requires a financial guarantee. So they'll put up financial guarantee for the infrastructure that they're wanting to install, so that we can record the plat. That way that money would be available if we need to if the city needs to go in and complete a project that a project failed and bailed on.
And really where we've seen some distinction is also between single lot plats versus actual subdivisions of property. And so we want to also clarify that process between those 2 entities, because there's a different level of risk.
This a change you're suggesting we make?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got some cleanup to do, so just wanted to update council that staff is working on that, just to make sure the submittal requirements, the criteria for approval of the plat, and the deferment of those obligations don't all line up exactly. We've got an understanding of
Okay.
what we meant, that's not exactly what it says.
So what about the pre-development? Is any of that being updated?
No, the pre-development would still be the adequate facilities plan, preliminary plat.
Still feel that that's
That's
working the
functioning
way
well.
it's functioning?
Yes. That's all I have for the subdivision ordinance review. Like I said, we'll go through with staff and draft that out, take it to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then back to council for adoption. Any questions there?
Just we'll be looking at timeline for that. How often does the CRC usually meet? And I know
think it's
Councilmember
every
Clarkson, you're on that. What's usually the
wouldn't-
timeline for?
This wouldn't be
This wouldn't go
CRC.
to the code review committee. Since we're just doing a minor update, it would just go directly to the
Okay.
Planning Commission.
Okay.
Just looking at it in the next couple of months, as we get some other pending projects finished up, then we'll take this to the Planning Commission.
Okay.
There you go. Like I said, don't have any
There you go.
specific dates,
Okay.
but that's the process.
All right.
The Hill Country Development Guidelines, as we've kind of keyed these different kind of accessory ordinances along with development, not specific to zoning, not specific to building code, but obviously they all tie in together. Dark sky ordinance under the implementation P 4.8, evaluate the desirability of night sky ordinance. Code Review Committee has looked at a draft a couple years ago. At the time, they shifted their focus to the subdivision ordinance and tabled those guidelines at that time. Came back to the Code Review Committee earlier this year. Timeline, I think it's at the end. Went back to the Code Review Committee earlier this year, and they did recommend an ordinance for adoption. We talked about it during the council workshop or council retreat this summer. And then tree preservations, C from the community, 4.3, consider a tree preservation ordinance. At this time, Code Review Committee is recommending guidelines so that we can start educating the community on the importance of tree preservation. And then if in the future, council and the community are ready for an ordinance, that could be adjusted to be more of a regulatory implementation.
I mean, what the P 4.8 and C 4.3, what are those?
Those are out of the Kerrville 2050 plan,
2050.
action items under the parks and open space for P and the community and placemaking for the C.
Thank you.
Sorry.
And where did we go with the title night sky instead of dark sky, since that's kind of what everybody is used to and refers to?
Right, I think as the industry's changing, it keeps shifting from dark sky to night sky. We've talked about it more as night sky. The International Dark Sky Association obviously is following more of a dark sky. Hill Country Alliance refers to it as dark sky and outdoor lighting ordinance. So as that industry is shifting, it's kind of morphing back and forth, but. Again, the goals here would be to have some consistent regulations and guidelines. We can certainly use these to provide reference in other partnerships and development agreements or incentive agreements, and also, again, assisting in educating the community. And some of these slides you've probably seen before. Obviously, the goal for the dark sky ordinance or night sky ordinance is to protect the night sky. Reduction in glare and light trespass, that's more at the ground level for neighboring properties. Here's an example, I forget exactly when this was, you might be able to read it at the bottom of your screen. One of the blackouts in the northeast, someone took these photographs showing what it looked like with and without lights. Here's just a couple diagrams to show the different definition of light trespass versus, where does the light need to be focused? Where does it start to become light trespass? And obviously any uplighting does not protect the sky. And then the top right, you see some examples of what you have for more of your open current fixtures on the left and acceptable night sky fixtures on the right. Again, shielded, down lighting, keeping that light trespass and upward lighting to a minimum.
And also just for you guys as a reminder, I think I mentioned this before, but the Code Review Committee has representatives from the development community on it, and so they, from those conversations, those in attendance, and I can't remember who all was in attendance, but they didn't find it problematic or overly burdensome to move into this direction. So that was part of just to know there was some community input there from the people that are doing this on a daily basis.
Thank you, good to know.
I think the short end of that conversation was we have to buy a light. It's just a matter of which type of light are we buying. So for the new construction, there's minimal impact. Any replacement of broken or damaged lights, again, there'd be minimal impact because you're already purchasing that equipment. So here's a light pollution map. As you can see, we're kind of on the edge of some of the bigger metropolitan areas on I-35. I want to continue to protect that. And just a couple key points. Obviously, you can see from these, wrong way. You can see from those examples, shielding is kind of one of the primary focuses, down lighting, not up lighting. light trespass, keeping the light focused on the property or whatever you're obviously trying to light up, whether that be residential or commercial. There is a specific section in the draft ordinance for outdoor sports lighting. Obviously, that's a much different lighting need. It can't be as dim and reduced as it would be for other projects. So there are specific parameters for that. And the big part of that is timers so that they automatically shut off after the event's over and that kind of stuff, so they're not left on for hours. Certainly don't want to pay those electric bills, but the additional light is unnecessary.
Okay, so Drew, so those, so buildings that currently have the unacceptable lighting in place, are they just grandfathered and this
Yes.
applies just to new construction?
New construction and replacement. So any.
Okay, so if there was a building that had a light on the outside that broke, they would have to replace that with a downward,
Correct.
okay, okay.
Is that even like if the light bulb goes out and then you
No,
replace the bulb?
replacing the equipment, the fixture.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, the actual, if it's an actual light bulb, they can just replace those. If they're having to replace any of the fixtures or the mounting hardware or building remodel, they'd have to bring those up to
I'm
compliance.
wondering about signs.
There is a specific section that talks about signs, and coming from the draft model ordinance from the Texas Hill Country Alliance, they do talk about the brightness of signs, which our ordinance addresses to some extent, not to this level.
Okay,
It talks about some of the backlighting versus, I'm trying to think of some of the examples. Some of your cabinet signs recommends a dark background rather than a white background. So kind of the negative, so you're producing less light. Dark background with a lighter, the name of the business and light portions of the letters, instead of a dark word with a white background.
okay.
It's been a bit, Drew, so when we talked about this as a committee, we were not looking, or did you have a draft ordinance at that time?
No.
Because we were making a decision about guideline versus
Well, I
ordinance.
take that
or-
back. We did have draft guidelines at that time. If you remember, Dr. Rector and some of the Friends of
Yes,
the
I
Night
do.
Sky brought the Texas Hill Country Alliance with
Yes.
them and passed out copies.
Right,
And Code Review Committee recommended that ordinance be brought forward. So
to
that's what
use
we
it
did
as is.
as the template, right?
Okay, so when we see it, and when P and Z sees it, it's a draft that was not developed through Review Committee, but it was given the push forward through Code Review Committee.
Recommended by Code Review Committee, correct.
Okay.
Any other questions on dark skies? And tree preservation, again, these are recommended to be guidelines from Code Review Committee to establish what those guidelines are for protection of trees, protection of healthy trees, and guidance for replacement and replanting for any trees that are removed during construction. And we will recommend the plants for the Kerrville area, recommended size and type of tree based on what type of tree, what should be considered a specimen tree, what diameters. And then again, replacement trees, the type and amount.
Where did the recommendations come from?
Some of these we've picked from other communities. Some of them were just standards for this part of Texas as far as what types of trees. What's a large, healthy live oak is obviously much different than some of the different, bur oaks, Monterey oaks. They have different sizes. So what would be one that should be protected? Is it a specimen tree at that point based on the diameter and the age of the tree? Versus obviously a cypress tree has a much different size and growth pattern than some of the oaks. But picking up some of that information, some of it initially started with Texas A&M AgriLife, or the Extension Service as they were previously named, did the Kerrville area plants list, and then adapting some of that to the age and size and types of the trees.
This would be good to put into development agreements when, companies are groups are
Looking at that.
looking at incentives that the city can provide, then this is something they could be required to do,
Yeah,
could be.
some of the development agreements we've had have referenced preserving trees, but we didn't have any specific parameters on what that looked like per project. This would have that extra level of detail that we could reference. Any questions there? There's my timeline. So again, we looked at these council workshop back in February, code review committee in March. Talked a little bit about both of them at the retreat in May, and October 25th, both these will be on your agenda. The first reading of the ordinance for dark skies and the resolution for tree preservation. And then beyond that, ongoing community education efforts using these documents and helping spread those words. Any questions?
When we get well, I don't have a question, I guess is kind of a suggestion. I would appreciate anything that comes forth with the sky ordinance be worded dark sky, because I think it's one, consistent throughout the presentation that we just saw and consistent throughout the community, the term that's used, and so there's no confusion. And so anybody who comes to city council, if they see it on our agenda, I guess it's easier for them to be aware of what exactly we're doing. Night sky, at least for me, if I would have saw night sky throughout the whole thing, I would have been like, is that the same as dark sky or is that a little bit different? So there's that. And then the second thing is, are we going to have a copy of the drafts in advance for us to review before that first reading? And,
As soon as we can get those buttoned up, we'll get those drafts out to you.
okay. Because that's just the only thing. The recommendations right now, I've seen the bullet points, but it's the language that's in the resolutions or ordinances that is actually the law. So I'd have to wait and reserve to see what is actually in those. Thank you, though.
Okay, anybody else? Brenda?
Nope, I'm good.
Joe?
I see one is an ordinance and one's a resolution. Why is that?
The code review committee recommended dark skies to be an ordinance, so that is regulatory and requirements, whereas the tree preservation are just guidelines. So suggestions for the community.
So guideline seems a lot softer than an ordinance, doesn't it?
It is.
That's what they're recommending for, they give a reason?
More for an education piece, so it's more of a stair step. Educate the community with some guidelines. We can use those for incentive agreements as a policy, and then possibly in the future moving forward with regulations and requirements.
Gotcha.
Anyone else? Roman?
Well, is there a reason why they decided to go further step in an ordinance on the dark sky ordinance, and then decided just regulations on the tree preservation?
It started with the dark skies or night skies to be something that the committee first wanted to be just a recommendation and a guideline. I think there's a lot of sensitivity in the community to private property owner rights and not being overly regulatory. And so that's why I made mention that when the committee reviewed and talked with development in the night sky, Hill Country Alliance came, and it was a really good conversation, and the committee said, okay, this doesn't seem to be too heavy-handed. It seems to be something that our community can bear, something that the development community is already used to doing, and not overly regulatory. And so then the tree guideline / ordinance gets back into more of, this is my private property. What if I need to do this, or what if I can't preserve this, or what if, the cost of doing this. So that conversation came back out. So that's my committee perspective.
I understand. Do we think a resolution will actually save any trees, or do you think
I think it will, and
In development
save the
agreements.
trees that need to be saved?
Where we've run into it before, we referenced it earlier, is typically in development agreements, right? That's where the vast majority of your larger construction projects are happening. And so We've struggled in the past with staff having consistent direction, community direction on what to put into those agreements and not having to reinvent the wheel every time. And so it's much easier to just be able to say, hey, you're going to abide by these guidelines, which have already been set by the community in this specific instance, rather than it being a blanket across all all required
I just
development.
understand the significance between the two, and now I do, so thanks.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Drew.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We got one more item for your workshop today. On around a quarterly basis, we try to bring forth a status update on your various community improvement projects. As you know, we've got over 20 active projects. Some are planning efforts, some are city construction efforts, some are private construction efforts, some are public-private partnerships. And so Mr. Burrow and Mr. Barron are here today to update you on a smattering of those, and then certainly answer any questions you may have on other projects which we don't directly update you.
All right, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm gonna skip around, so if you have anything direct, just stop me at that point. On tonight's agenda, we do have the change order for essentially the closeout. There's a deduct that we have to do to finalize the street recon with Alamo City. That one's, like I said, just close out. We can discuss now, we can discuss for later, if you have any questions on that. What that will do is utilize, that's the 2019 bond allocation for streets and drainage. Once we're done with the lower lowest portion, we'll get into the upper lowest drainage portion. And if we have any funding allocation left over from those two, then we'll look to utilize that on one of those streets for drainage projects. So,
Can you say that one more time? Let's see.
okay, so in
The
19.
allocation, there's like $2.9 million on that document, if I remember correctly. Is that what we didn't spend, or we're gonna reallocate it to a different
189?
thing, or is it 290,000? I don't
I
remember.
think it's
yeah,
more like
okay, yeah.
a little under 300 maybe.
Right, yeah, it's 208,000 for the deduct. So, right, so what that is, yeah, so what that is essentially quantities that didn't get used.
We
Wallace,
can
for
use it on
example.
something else.
Yes, and so what we have to do is we have to be zero remaining, and so we have to bring that, just like taking a change order to you for additional funds, we have to come back to you for anything as a deduct, I guess over 50 for a deduct, to close this thing out and get them retainage and whatnot. So what that is just, like I said, unused quantities.
What
We're
if
gonna see
what if
that
we
in the-
say no?
That's a consent agenda.
I don't have to defer to the attorney on that one. I guess you give them free money. So,
No.
so-
But that interesting, thanks.
Okay. Olympic Drive, we're working with KISD continuously as the school zones go in. We're trying to get that thing hashed out from Singing Wind to 534. There's still some issues on sign locations, this, that, the other. The driveway has made significant improvements to that traffic in that area, but again, that's still on here. I know it's been open for a while, but that's just a continuous effort between staff and KISD.
Overall, we've had a really productive paving season, as we've mentioned a number of times before. This council's been really strong on streets, and that continues to be the case. The blessing of having a very dry and warm summer is that our streets crews were out there doing a ton of work, as well as our private contractors that were doing street reconstruction. And so we had a tremendously successful paving season this year. And we'll come back this fall and update you guys more on those exact numbers. But we got a lot of slurry seal work done. We got a lot of crack seal work done. We got a lot of street reconstruction done. We got a lot of mill and overlay work done. So we're turning the tide on street condition. So we're excited to present those results to you
And
guys.
my street looks great.
You skipped over Westminster.
Mine looks the same.
I just haven't got to it yet.
Oh, okay. I thought.
That's why I had the little disclaimer in the beginning that I was skipping around. So I'll get that one. So the Knapp wastewater project is what we've kind of been waiting on, to get the economy scale with Westminster, Water Street water line, and the Knapp gravity sewer. We finally got the preliminary approval for the environmental component from Water Development Board last month. And I haven't got the official letter, but essentially what I'm looking at is yes, ma'am.
So you're saying Knapp infrastructure affects Westminster
There was the
reconstruct?
3 projects that we talked about, just bidding them all at the same time to get that economy of scale.
on the bid.
Okay.
Right, yes. ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah,
I was
not the
I was
same
finding that
project,
really
uh,
interesting.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, no, so that's, and it's probably gonna be more comparable with Westminster and Water Street Waterline. You know, the NAP project, we're just hoping, you know, especially with our local contractors, you know, they do any size of these pipes. We may get some bigger contractors on the NAP project than what these do, but that's what we wanna invest the interest and try to get that cost down as much as possible.
So are you say you let them all at the same time?
Yes, ma'am.
And that is in hopes that you have one construction company that will bid all?
We're hoping to get more than just one bid in.
But I mean,
Yes.
by
Right.
letting them at the same time, you might draw in some operations that want to do all of the projects.
Yes, yes, and that's what, you know, because if they're ordering the same size pipe, the more they order, the you know, a little bit better discount they get.
Okay.
And we're not also paying mobilization charges, you know, their crews are here.
Yeah.
You know, there's a whole variety of things, and so
Okay.
that's the interest for us is to try to minimize, you know, ancillary costs that kind of, you know, drive things up.
Okay.
So does that answer your question on Westminster? Okay. We're getting to it.
I was gonna say, one of these days, it's not gonna be there, so.
I don't know the backstory, but I know some people up here want to have a street dance on Westminster. when it's
Right.
done.
So, and Atmos, I believe, is out of our way finally. I know they had a couple of delays as well, so that was part of the initial, and then we just said, okay, let's, you know, this one's getting close. So, but I do expect, I'm looking at probably the 22nd, putting that in the paper. So, because we've been done with the design, we're making sure we check every box on the water bill board.
And you
So,
finding that they're repairing the roads to our standards?
right now, they're actually just, for this one, since we're coming in, ripping it up, we just asked them to put culverts down.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
I thought you meant
Yes.
the work they were doing this summer.
No, well, yes, on Westminster.
Oh,
For anything outside of where we're gonna come in and do street recon, then yes, we make them do it to our standards. But for this one, we just asked them to do basically a temporary patch.
sure.
Lower lowest drainage, if you have not seen it already, it is a significant improvement. And, unfortunately, we haven't had rain to go through it, but tomorrow we will be pouring the connection piece to the box that goes under Guadalupe Street. So once that's done, the whole bottom will be complete, and then they'll continue the upper portion of the boxes to finish that tie-in. So we're looking at about mid-November completion for that project. So let it rain.
Bring it.
Yes, that is a good thing about it being dry. They've been able to work continuously. So, library campus, I've got these three just kind of, you know, on here. I know we've done the ribbon cutting for the ramps in July. A lot of people utilize that thing. A lot of, you know, thumbs up. So, you know, kudos to everyone on the dais to get that going. AC replacement, we didn't have any issues this summer. We got that done. The lighting, we're still having some delays. They're just, as a fixture comes in, they're installing it. I think there's three or four remaining. We're expecting those to come in this week, but it's one of those we, you know, wait to see when it actually gets here to see what we're gonna get.
External or internal lighting?
I believe there's one external and the remainder are internal.
The face down, is it hooded?
On the external, of course. We're compliant.
Right answer.
So one of the reasons
Even
we
have
wanted,
to be.
one of the reasons we wanted to highlight those three in combination with each other, as you can see, in total, it's about $1 million worth of improvements that this council has put into the library facility here over this last year. So it's certainly been a tremendous asset for this community, and we've been glad that we've been able to upgrade both access to that facility as well as the building itself, so this community can continue to enjoy the library.
Okay, and right next door, the A.C. Shriner, you know, house, Heart of the Hills Heritage Center, however you want to look at it. It gets called a lot of different things, but we do have that out right now with the shortlisted group. You know, if you recall, we had 5 that were well qualified to do that project. They are reviewing the design components of that. We're hoping to get proposals back probably early to mid-November. And we're working with legal to get that contract review completed in hopes of bringing something to you to award the design build component. So this will be the first design build that the city's done in the December meeting.
So, obviously, I have an interest in that project, but I've also had a lot of questions why it's taking so long.
So over the summer, we had to get the council approval for the owner's representative. And then really the biggest thing is because it's our first one. We
Okay,
don't
so
have
it's a new
templates.
process for us.
Yes, sir. The design build is not something the city has done. And I don't know if Mr. Hayes has mentioned to any of you guys, but council has to approve anything for populations, I believe, less than 50,000. So we had to get Freese Nichols on board to help us. What do we do? You know, and that's not just for you, that's for me as well, as I'm reviewing a contract with our attorneys that, hey, I don't know, this is not our standard construction contract, because we're combining that professional services and construction contract into one entity, and so it's definitely an interesting component.
And I'm not faulting anyone, and I think you're doing a good job, and we want it done right, but you're not waiting on us.
No, sir. No, and right now, like I said, that RFP is out on the streets to
Good.
those
Well, that's a
five.
good step.
Yeah, one of the other key aspects, as you recall from the design build process, the front end does take a little bit longer in the hopes that it speeds up the process on the back end, particularly in the design and the construction process, because those are combined and it connects those teams
You
together.
would think that history people would take a longer view, but they want it now.
We understand the strong desire to have a delivered product, so.
What is the date? What's the cutoff date on the RFPs, RFQs, whichever?
Right now, it's November 3rd, so that's kind of contingent upon the attorneys, Freese and Nichols and other staff getting that contract out to them in enough time to, you know, to do the review themselves. Right now, they've got ample time for the design components to give us subs and get their numbers sharpened, but right now, I've got it for November 3rd opening.
As
that
you're telling the community that that's the drop dead on their submittals?
As of right now, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay.
And that, remember too, that request for proposal process is really how we ensure that competitive process, right? To make sure that the community is getting good value, that ultimately comes in, and it's front-loading that front part of the design process, because those contractors and design teams really have to come in and basically say how they're gonna produce the product that the community is wanting to
pretty
do
comprehensive.
within the budget that we've allocated for
Right.
it, so.
So there's a lot of front-loading,
Yeah, it really kind of condenses that competitive process, and make sure we're getting good proposals.
Is the feeling, there's going to be a lot of people interested?
Well, we had the 5 respondents to the RFQ, and those were kind of what we call the shortlisted group.
Oh,
So
okay.
those will be the only 5, no more, no less, well, I guess it could be less if some of them
Okay.
don't want to, but no more than 5 that were already part of that selection.
Okay.
So we have 5 qualified teams.
Teams.
They're all developing proposals. We assume that they will all submit proposals, and then those will be evaluated.
Okay. In town, out of town?
Yes.
It's amazing.
The furthest one, I think, was the east side of San Antonio.
Okay.
And they had a lot of, I think they grew up in Kerrville. So essentially, I think all but one had Kerrville ties. They were either here or had ties growing up here. So
All right,
really
good.
good interest on that. Speaking of the other design build, we'll stay on that note, public safety facility. So you'll see this one is moving a little bit faster because we've done a lot of the legwork up front with the Heritage Center. The RFQ is out right now. So this is the pre-qualification portion. We're gonna get those later this month on the 25th. And that will shortlist the group that's gonna get the design criteria to give us the numbers for the proposals.
And when is that due?
Right now, it's for the 25th. We haven't had any critical questions come up that would delay that, so that's what we're looking at is
October
25th.
25th?
Yes, sir. And bringing that to you on, I think, whatever the November meeting is, I think it's November 8th. That's kind of what I have penciled
What
in.
was on November 8th?
So it would be the shortlist group of qualified design build teams for the public safety facility. So if you recall on Heritage Center, we did RFQ, and then now we moved into the RFP stage. The reason we didn't bring anything on RFQ, I think we just, in this setting, we gave you an update. We only had 5. State law only allows 5. We got 5 in. We said, hey, they're all qualified. Had we negated 1 or 2 of those, we would have brought that to you to say, okay, these 3 are eligible to move forward.
So we did get, we'll see how many folks actually submit the request for qualifications. We did have a preliminary meeting last week, an
Yes.
informational session, and we had a tremendous showing of that. So
This room was full and standing room. So that was really good showing. Big contractors that I wasn't even sure that they were going to bid on this, but it's got a lot of public interest right now.
Awesome.
Good.
Can you go through the dates one more time? Because I was trying to write
Okay,
down
so-
just two of them.
I'll go project by project.
Great.
So Heritage Center, those RFPs will be due November 3rd.
Okay.
And we will likely bring that to you the December, I think it's the 13th, for the December meeting.
Sure, okay.
So public safety, those are, the qualification statements are due October 25th.
Okay.
And the intent is to bring something to you November 8th at that meeting as a qualification, shortlisting the qualified contractors. And then those contractors will then receive the RFP soon after with the design criteria and contract.
Thank you.
And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Stuart.
Just gonna bring you up to speed on two of them. One of them's on here and one of them's actually not. But the tank projects that we're doing on Lowest Tank, it was number 18. You'll see on there that we've awarded it to Orca Partners for the design of the new tank. One thing that we're working on, and the main reason I wanted to stand up here tonight and talk to you all a little bit, was about a component of that is our well that we're working on, Methodist Encampment Well. And we've been having, we consider it an emergency well right now. And as part of this project, we're asking them to help us get that well in an operational format where we'll be able to use it as a normal operating well. Another project that we're working on, it's another well project for next summer, will be H Street well. So it has a liner that's
Will be
going
what,
down.
which well?
H Street.
H
It's-
Street.
Yeah, y'all don't see it on here because it's an operation. It's not a huge expense. But the liner has holes in it, and the pump got eaten up with sand, and so we'll be replacing that. I just wanted to bring those two forward because it's looking like next summer is going to be really dry, really dry, and so we're trying to get a jump on those things and try to get ahead of that. As far, I don't know if we'll get ahead of the drought or not, but at least plan for it the best we can. So we are taking some proactive measures to fix what we have right now and try to be ready for the drought next summer.
Particularly during the winter season when water demand's a little bit less, we're trying to really go in. We always do preventative maintenance, but we're maybe doing a little bit more extensive preventative maintenance than we have in years past, just so we can make sure that when we need it, we can hit the wells full bore if our community and environmental conditions persist.
Will the new tank look like the old tanks, except
Excuse me?
same design roughly as the old tank on Lois?
It's probably gonna be a concrete tank, and so that one's actually steel. The concrete's a little bit more expensive for building it, but the longevity and the repair and maintenance over the years is a whole lot less. So yeah, we would prefer to do a concrete tank there.
Well, it lasted 60 years, so.
Yeah, the concrete, so it doesn't rust, right? And that's what's wrong with that tank right now, is the roof is starting to rust in, the ladder has fallen in a couple different times over the years, and the hatch is rusty, so, we believe, and it's kind of proven out over the years, that concrete just lasts maybe almost twice as long as the steel tanks do, so.
Can we paint a mural on it?
Yes, ma'am. You betcha.
Did I understand on the wells, we're not replacing them, we're repairing?
So both of those two wells are existing right now, the H Street well and also Methodist Encampment. Methodist Encampment is considered an emergency well by our standard because it has some taste and odor issues that go along with it. So we're working with this engineer right now to try to find out where is that coming from? Is there a place in the aquifer that we can kind of blind off and not get any of those taste or odor problems? It also has some radioactive nuclides in it, which is kind of common for decomposing granite. As you get north of here in those aquifers, you actually get a lot of decomposing granite. And it occasionally bumps the limit of to how much TCQ you allow you to have. And so it's right on the cusp. And so we're trying to find out what can we do if the taste and odors we think is coming from a lower aquifer. There's an aquifer between the Ellenberger and the Trinity. It's called the Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania actually has some hydrocarbons in it, just enough oil so you can kind of taste it, not enough to do any good. But there's areas that there may be 2,000 to 3,000 feet of Pennsylvania between the two. As y'all remember from our Ellenberger search that we did, we were looking for the places that didn't have Pennsylvania. And so that the Trinity's laying right on top of the Ellenberger. This particular well is laying on, there's the Trinity and then the Pennsylvania and then the Ellenberger. And so when we dug down past the Trinity well, or the Trinity, I know I'm going way into too much detail, but it's pretty interesting for me. We actually drilled down into the Pennsylvania so all of the filings and everything could fall down into it into the hole and keep the bore clean. We think that that extra 20 foot that we drilled into it is where most of our problem is coming from. So we're trying to find out how can we blind that off without damaging the rest of the well.
So it used to be one of the community's most productive wells, and because of the problems Stuart just elaborated on, we've shifted to other wells. But as the droughts persisted and we continue to look and tweak our system, and the science has gotten better with the science that's come out of our aquifer research in partnership with the geologists at Headwaters. And so we're improving our system based off of new data.
That well's at top of Methodist Encampment near the cross?
Yes, sir, it's right there by the tank. And a lot of that data I just shared with you is from those geologists that have done this for longer than I've been alive, so they've proven out on a few other wells that have really been beneficial to the city. And that's all I have. I'll take
Okay,
any more
thank you.
questions.
Thank you.
The only other thing I had was this nice, fancy, colorful sheet for you. Wanted to let Stuart give you an update on that. What this is, just a tentative schedule on a lot of projects, so you can kind of see what we've got. And I did add in a little yellow component for our design build, so wasn't conceptual, wasn't in design, because that is part of the contract. So just like I said, looking ahead into end of fiscal 24, just to give you an idea of what we've got. Some of these are just repetitive, base repair and crack seal and slurry seal. That's our repetitive street maintenance projects. But if you have any questions on this, let me know. There's also a list of private projects that we have in progress. Again, just to give you timeline ideas of when things can be coming to an end or commencing.
So this just gives you a little bit different visual representation. As you can see, we're wrapping up quite a bit of these projects up at the top. They're final in construction. Some of them have actually fallen off, and if they fell off here, there's just this last end of the fiscal year, we went ahead and dropped them. But then you've got a lot of these areas in the green, which are in the planning stages, and staff's working with engineers and other folks to get those to a level where they can be bid out and move into construction. And then you can see these areas in red, really quite a bit of these starting off into the next calendar year, and then progressing for any number of months, some of which may go multiple years for the bigger projects. So anyway, just giving you a little bit of how the pipeline looks, certainly within our not only our engineering efforts and our bidding efforts and our construction inspection, and we see these things start to finish. So
Will we be able to see the design of the public safety facility?
So it comes together with the design build process, right? So ultimately, those qualified applicants put those proposals together based off of the criteria. So you're not going to see a separate contract for it, right? Because
Right.
it'll be put together. But yes, ultimately, you will be signing the contract for that design build team.
Okay.
You're talking about like the final design of it,
Yes.
a visual representation?
Yes,
Yeah, that will be part of those proposals as they come
Okay.
forward to you all.
okay.
So we're gonna start the pavement update next month?
That's the hope. We should have a contract right now. We've tentatively got that on your agenda. We're in the process of evaluating different potential contractors for that. And so that work is typically done over the winter season because that's the best time for the analysis. And so we don't want to miss this winter season.
So,
Did I say that accurately, Kyle?
You did.
Okay, good.
so we may not be using the same company as what you're saying, it'll be another award of bid?
Correct, yeah. For the actual firm that may be driving the truck, the analysis vehicle, so to speak, the contractor that we've utilized from a street standpoint and really kind of putting the plan together, we intend to move forward with that entity again.
Okay.
But for the one that's out there doing the
the
radar
driving.
work and the analysis, that may be a
Okay.
different vendor.
Okay.
According to this, it looks like, if I'm on the right line, the lowest street, we've got 2 more years to go before that's going to,
You looking at the drainage? Okay, so yeah, one thing I mentioned forgot to mention with that, so TxDOT will not start their 27 crossing until all utilities are done. Part of that is a NAP project. So if you look at the NAP project, yeah, so
Okay.
they have to have it all clear before they even bid this thing. So, yeah, unfortunately, that delay with Water Development Board is delaying the TxDOT component. Yeah, and it's just the chain effect.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
There should be a significant improvement, though, with just the lowest
With
work
that,
that's been
okay.
completed.
Okay.
But certainly, we're continuing to keep the iron in the fire on
That's
upper
good.
Lois as well.
That's good, thank you. So, all right, thank you much.
Yes, thank you.
All right, it is 5:09. Do we need to go into executive session?
Staff does not have any update items for you in the workshop on executive session.
All right. Then, I guess, at 5:09, we can close the workshop. And we have a little bit of time. So, thank you all.
Time.